I started back all the way across this groaning continent with my 10 sandwiches and a couple of dollars and got back to New York just in time to see Ed White, Bob Burford, and Frank Jeffries off on the Queen Mary for France. Never dreaming that the following year I'd be with Neil and Jeffries, both on the craziest trip of all. Moreover, you would think a bus trip such as I took from Frisco to New York would be uneventful and I'd get home in one piece and could relax. Not so. In North Dakota, the bus got stuck in a tremendous Badlands blizzard that piled up the road 10 feet high. The back machinery blew up and burned as I slept. The bus became frozen so that the passengers had to spend the night in a diner or freeze. And nevertheless, I slept unnoticed in the bus and felt perfect. And when I woke up, I slept right straight through the repairs in a Fargo garage. In Butte, Montana, I got involved with the drunken Indians. Spent all night in a big wild saloon that was the answer to Bill Burroughs' quest for the ideal bar. I made a few bets on the wall, got drunk. I saw an old card dealer who looked exactly like W.C. Fields and made me cry thinking of my father. There he was, fat, with a bulbous nose, wiping himself with a back pocket handkerchief, green visor, wheezing asthmatically in the Butte winter night. Games. Till he finally packed off with his old dog to sleep another day. He was a blackjack dealer. I also saw a 90-year-old man called Old John, who played cards with slitted eyes and had been doing so, they say, for the last 70 years in the Butte night. In Big Timber, I saw a young cowboy who lost an arm in the war and sat with the old men in the winter afternoon looking with longing eyes at the boys loping by outside in the great Yellowstone snows. In Dakota, I saw a rotary plow hit a brand new Ford and send it scattering in a million pieces over the plain like sowing for the spring. In Toledo, Ohio, I got off the bus and I hitchhiked up to Detroit, Michigan to see my first wife. She wasn't there and her mother wouldn't lend me $2 to eat with. I sat fuming with rage on the floor of the Detroit Greyhound bus station men's room. I sat among bottles. Preachers approached me with stories of the Lord. I spent my last dime on a cheap meal in Detroit Skid Row. I called up my wife's father's new wife, and she wouldn't even see me. My whole wretched life swam before my weary eyes, and I realized no matter what you do, it's bound to be a waste of time in the end, so you might as well go mad. All I wanted to do was drown my soul in my wife's soul and reach her through a tangle of shrouds, which is flesh and bed. At the end of the American road is a man and a woman making love in a hotel room. That's all I wanted. Her relatives were conspiring to keep us separated. Not that they were wrong, but they felt I was a bum and would only reopen old wounds in her heart. Actually, she was in Lansing, Michigan that night, 100 miles away, and I was lost. All I wanted, and all Neil wanted, and all anybody wanted was some kind of penetration into the heart of the things where, like in a womb, we would curl up and sleep the ecstatic sleep that Burroughs was experiencing with a good, big, mainline shot of M and advertising executives in New York were experiencing with 12 scotch and sodas and stoofers before they made the drunkard's train to Westchester, but without hangovers. And I had many romantic fancy then. And I sighed at my star, and the truth of the matter is you die. All you do is die. And yet you live. Yes, you live. And that's no Harvard lie. In Pennsylvania, I had to get off the bus and steal apples in a country town store or starve. I staggered back east in search of my stone, got home and ate everything in the icebox again, only now it was a refrigerator. Fruit of my 1947 labors. And that in some measure was the progress of my life. Then came the great ship of the world. I went to school and met Mrs. Holmes in the lobby, John Holmes's mother, whom I'd just seen as I went through West Tucson. And she said her son was seeing off some friends of mine on the Queen Mary. I didn't have a nickel. I walked 3 miles to the pier, and there were John Holmes, his wife, and Ed Stringham standing around waiting to be admitted to the gangplank. We rushed on board and found Ed White, Bob Burford, Frank Jeffries drinking whiskey in their stateroom with Allen Ginsberg, who had brought it, together with his latest poems and others. Not only that, but Hal Chase was on the ship, and the ship was so big that we never saw him. And Lucien Carr was on the ship, but he was seeing another party of people off and didn't even know we were there. Mad Burford dared me to stow away and go to France with them. I accepted the dare. I was drunk. We held up the elevator and were told that some Somerset Maugham, the famous writer, was fuming because of this. We saw Truman Capote, supported by two old ladies, staggering on the ship in tennis sneakers. Americans rushed pell-mell through narrow corridors drunk. It was the great ship of the world. It was too big. Everybody was on it, and everybody was looking for everyone else and couldn't find. Pier 69, John Holmes's wife insisted I would not stow away and dragged me off the ship by ear. I played football among warehouse crates. It was the end of another era. It was the second ship I had missed in 2 years, one on both coasts, the Korean ship and this Queen Mary France-bound ship. And the reason for this was because I was doomed for the road and the ragged investigation of my native country with the crazy Neil. After all that happened, you wouldn't believe it, but it was I that went and saved Neil in his hour of broken need within a matter of months. It was worth it, for thereafter, Neil became great.